What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Nuts and Bolts Sports. Raj Jordan Henry, and joining us today, a very special guest. Jeff Newholm is joining us from NBS. He's a writer, he's an editor, loves WNBA, loves the Milwaukee Bucks. Big time here, ready to talk about some free agency. Jeff, I don't know if you want to quickly intro yourself before we get into things.
Hey, yep, I'm Jeff Newholm. I'm an editor and WNBA writer at Nuts and Bolts Sports. I'm a former host of the Nuts and Bolts Association podcast for a bit of a reshuffling, but I'm on here today to talk about some of the positive going on for the Bucks and some of the not so positives, and we'll have a lot to say about that.
Good mix of positive and negative there for the Bucks. They kind of kicked off the free agency trade shuffle, whatever you want to call it, window in a pretty exciting way. Like I said, in a positive and a negative way. But yeah, we're going to be talking about everything here, from the latest signings to the trades that have kind of happened in the past few hours, as well as some rumors and speculation that we've heard about throughout the week. And there's, because this is sort of the free agency window, I guess we'll start with some of the bigger signings. And we've had actually a pretty good number of names pop up here. Some big names, some small names, some Detroit Pistons signings that we'll get into in a second. But let's start with some of the bigger names here, and the kind of guys I'm honing in on, I guess, would be Dragic, obviously re-signing that 2-year deal extension with the Miami Heat, just under 40 million, about 37 million. De'Aaron Fox getting the big contract of the day so far, 5 years, 163 million extension with Sacramento. A couple other medium-sized names, Wes Matthews being in there, going to the Lakers as Jordan kind of predicted. Jordan
From
Clarkson up there, yeah, from the Bucks. Jordan Clarkson getting the 4-year, 52 million extension. There's a bunch of names here, but I kind of want to break it down by what's sort of the biggest news here, and I'll let our special guest Jeff sort of kick us off. You aren't a Bucks fan, so is it the loss of Wes Matthews? Before we get into the trade talk and whatnot, what's your favorite or sort of big standout free agent signing?
My big standout free agent signing, I would say, well, yes, Wes Matthews. Some of the trades that have been going on have been truly monumental. We'll get into this more a bit later. There's some special pleading with tampering. Some teams being accused of it, some teams which should be accused of it but aren't because of special treatment, perhaps. But Wesley Matthews is a significant player for the Bucks, kind of overlooked, perhaps because Milwaukee's a smaller market, but he was a very good contributor for us. Played very well in playoffs, a very good defense against Jimmy Butler before he was inexplicably benched. And it wasn't matched up against him, so I think he's a good addition to the Lakers. Lakers obviously don't need an awful lot of help, but it gives them another veteran voice, and also it's another big takeaway from a Bucks team that's rapidly being depleted.
Yeah, what about you, Henry? What do you got to add to this?
I feel like the Bucks are finally making some good moves for Giannis, and in order to stay, they got Drew Holiday, which I think is the perfect player to complement Giannis, because after getting blown out by Miami, there's a lot of up in the air things with Milwaukee. Like, are they a complete team? Are they just a regular season team? Are they flawed in the playoffs, which they are? I think getting rid of Eric Bledsoe was a smart move. He's a great player, don't get me wrong, but not good enough to be that second option, because even Chris Middleton can be here and there at times, wavy himself. So they needed that to at least have their own, I guess you can say, big three. Would you guys consider it a big three with Middleton, Drew Holiday, and Giannis, or am I crazy?
Yeah, that's a big three.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, for sure. So I'm not crazy.
it's not LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Alex Caruso big three, but it's up there.
All right, he brought up the Lakers already. So
got my guy. I do think the Wes Matthews signing is good. I mean, he is obviously aging, and he's definitely whatever his prime or peak was with Portland, that's kind of not there anymore. Especially with him tearing his Achilles a couple years back, he hasn't quite been the same player. But as Jeff alluded to, still a very serviceable defender, very smart. Veteran, able to defend, some of the more athletic wings, out there. And, to get him, basically the Lakers have made two great moves in trading for Dennis Schroeder, which is, I guess he finished second in Sixth Man of the Year voting, electric speed, great shooting guard as well, is going to get a lot of open looks from LeBron and AD. to trade for him and give up just a first-round pick and Danny Green, who obviously showed his age and lack of shooting, shall we say, in the playoffs last year, to trade that and then to turn around and flip and get Wesley Matthews, who is essentially going to do it. He's going to fill the Danny Green role. Might even be a little bit better. I know his shooting numbers were a little bit better than Danny Green's last year. And to do it at a fourth of the price, I think that's. I mean, the Lakers. I'm not even think I'm being biased. I think they're completely winning their own free agency right now, and their own offseason, making the right moves to try and come back and defend that title.
Yeah, it's definitely an upgrade. I don't think there's any doubting that Danny Green is just sort of he's past his prime. That's the sad truth of the matter. And he did make an impact on this Lakers team playing with LeBron and AD this season. But getting Wes Matthews, despite the fact that he is still. He's not the player that he was before that injury happened. And it's unfortunate because he signed that huge deal and then the injury when it happened, he went down and it sucks. But he was a pretty stable contributor for Milwaukee, and I'm sure Jeff is sad to see him leave there. And I think he's going to be a very, very good addition for this LA team. We still have to see what they do because right now, the Schroeder move I think is a really good move, but the only other real signing that they have at this point is the JaVale McGee and the Dwight Howard rumors are starting to swirl again. So did you guys see the post, the Dwight Howard post? That was just ridiculous. Yep. That was just ridiculous, and that got deleted and whatnot. So we'll see what happens there. They obviously. Are
you surprised that Dwight Howard is like playing games in free agency? Like this is
I'm not. I don't think it's his fault. I think Jordan just hates him.
I'm so confused because it's his Twitter. It's his tweet.
I think he's trying to like will it into existence. I don't know if there's.
Go ahead, Jeff.
He was hacked.
Yeah. It's because his password's probably basketball1 with an exclamation. Now, what probably happened was that he was all but ready to come back to LA because they said the market was dry. They said the Lakers were the only team that were really considering offering him a deal. Yeah. But then he probably was so close to agreeing, and then maybe his agent got a call or something real late, like seconds after they gave the verbal agreement. So we'll see what happens there. I know the Lakers are also looking at a couple other names as well. And you know how this works. Free agency works in waves, right? There's different. Yeah. I was listening to Raja Bell, and I think it was Raja and Matt Barnes were talking the other day on a podcast, and they were saying there's just different waves. Guys know when they're going to be getting called from teams, and the agents know as well. So certain guys we maybe haven't heard from yet. It's all on a schedule. It really is. So we'll see what happens kind of moving forward.
The name that I haven't seen you throw out, Jordan, because you've thrown out a lot of good names in the conversation for the Lakers, and one guy who's declined his deal right now is Rodney Hood, and I could see him being a solid fit there with the Lakers. I don't know if
former teammate of LeBron's.
Yeah, former teammate of LeBron didn't have quite the success with those Cavs teams that he did after he went to Portland and lit up the Nuggets in those conference semis a couple of years ago. But I think he'd be a good fit with this Lakers team. There's a few names sort of swirling around the free agent market that still are, I don't think the Lakers are going to get any more big names, if we're being completely honest. I think there's going to go after names like Wes Matthews and like a Rodney Hood. Those are the kind of names they need to pile up here.
Mm-hmm. Serge Ibaka?
That's the one. That's the big one for them that I've been keying in on. They have the mid-level.
He's teasing you on Twitter, and
it's a little. It's like 9.2 million, I think, is what they have. My only fear is that Kevin Durant's brother answered somebody on social media saying that he was going to go to Brooklyn, and obviously the history between Durant and Ibaka being former teammates on the Thunder. So I could definitely see. I feel like it's probably 85% he's going to Brooklyn, and 15% he'll give somebody else a look. But if not, like you said, it'll be guys like Rodney Hood. They're going to work on Avery Bradley. I think Avery Bradley's going to be done with him by the weekend, and that'll be a 2 or 3 year deal. He just wanted more security. And then Caldwell Pope's kind of weird. I think if they don't get Ibaka, they might use the mid-level exception for Caldwell Pope because he wants a raise, and
I don't know about that.
He's a clutch agent. This is the reason why Anthony Davis is taking his time in free agency and not signing until next week, because he's pulling the LeBron James, which is get your guys paid first, and then you're getting your guaranteed money. So we'll see. The Lakers still obviously have some work to do, but there's going to be a lot of moves between now and Sunday for sure.
Yeah, I would like to spend more time on the Lakers because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to dissect with them. But we do have a lot of names here. And the other one, before we get into De'Aaron Fox having the massive contract, I want to hone in on Goran Dragic because I'm glad that Miami is, giving him a good amount of money here, paying him, close to just under $20 million a year for these next 2 years. But I'm glad that they're bringing him back so they can run it back and give that core team the opportunity. I obviously signed Myers Leonard as well for another 2 year extension, $10 million a year, so 20 total for the 2 years. So I'm glad that they're bringing that core back. They had a pretty good pick in the draft as well. A lot of good operate. And I could see Miami being a pretty heavily favored free agent destination for a lot of these other guys that are sort of on the market as well because of how well they performed. What do you guys think about the Goran Dragic signing? I'll toss it to Jordan first on this one.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. I was talking with Warren Shaw earlier, who's one of our Baseline podcast guys and helped us with the draft earlier this week. And he said, he put it, I think, in a very good way. He said it was a good way to make sure that you kept your financial flexibility for next year because they're both team options. But it was also a way to show loyalty to those guys as well because they've been there for the last couple of years. Dragic is playing some of his best basketball before he got hurt in the finals, and we all know that probably would have been every game would have been much more competitive in the finals had he been healthy. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. Him and Myers Leonard get their money. The Heat, Pat Riley is keeping that cap space for next year, keeping an eye on Giannis, just in case he doesn't do the super max or, if somebody else becomes available. So it's a win-win for both sides. Miami's going to be right back in the thick of things. It's going to be, I think, a tougher East. I don't think they're going to be able to just breeze through it with only 3 losses or whatever it was like they did last year. But they definitely they're making the moves to keep themselves in contention, at least for this year.
Yeah, Henry, what do you got on the Dragic signing?
I feel like it's the right move because he needs to run it back with the. It was unfortunate what happened to him in the finals with his injury. It was like a tease for him, like what could have been. I know Jordan would argue that the Lakers would have won anyways, which is probably true.
Lakers in 6.
Yeah, but I'm happy for this, especially because Jordan is right. The East is going to be, I feel like it's continually going to be much tougher for the next 5 years because Trae Young's only going to get better. The Celtics are building their assets. They're looking to make moves as well. Even though they just got some new ugly jerseys that I kind of don't like. Is that going to make it bleaker? I don't know. And then obviously Brooklyn, is on a hunt for James Harden. So Miami needs all their pieces that brought them to the finals back. I know they have their eye on Giannis, so I can see Giannis, getting there probably in the next 2-3 years if things don't work out in Milwaukee. But I like it. I like it a lot because Goran Dragic is 35 years of age now. He's heading to the end of his career, and I want to see him, with another title run, one that he deserves. So, Jeff, what do you think about it?
I think a 1+1 contract for the second year being a team option is a significant sign of respect by the Miami Heat. I remember when LeBron James signed a 1-1. We're talking about LeBron James, right? Arguably the best player of this generation. Now, obviously, Goran is not LeBron James, but the Miami Heat still showed a tremendous amount of respect in giving him the benefit of the doubt with this kind of a contract. Also, Dragic fits into the Heat culture in a way that commands himself respect. The Heat culture, some people say it's overblown. Some people say it is that big of a deal. Nuts and Bolts Sports, our Monty Perez, who is a tremendously talented writer, he wrote an article several years ago saying that Eric Spoelstra should be fired because he was underperforming for the Heat. And it seemed like Monty was correct because Spoelstra had been struggling for several years. But the Heat stuck with him, and now they finally have the key complement of players that's needed for them to make the run to the finals. They are probably missing one more piece, be it Giannis or whoever it may be, to win an NBA championship. But as Henry alluded to, they're keeping their core intact with the players they know will contribute to that. And if they can get Giannis or another superstar after 2021, they could be set to cruise.
Big news here while we're recording live. We're gonna get Jordan's celebration. Dwight Howard going to the Sixers. This is like the perfect move. This is like the perfect move. Shams just tweeted out. Dwight Howard has agreed to a 1-year deal with Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh man, I gotta text my friend.
He's not only leaving the Lakers, he's going to play with the Sixers. Let's get the live reaction from Jordan right now.
I mean, good for him, man. I mean, all my Philly friends who, I'll send them the clip of this. Good luck, man. Like if Embiid, actually, I'll say when Embiid goes down with a minor injury, hopefully, and he's just out for like a couple games, and you have that as your starting center, and he picks up 3 fouls in the first 10 minutes. I'm just telling you, man. Good luck, best wishes. Like I appreciate some of the effort in the playoffs, but like I'm not sad to see him go. The bigger news is what we just saw pop up on the screen too. Danilo Gallinari, 3 years, $61.5 million to the Hawks. What is? I mean, Does
That's a good move. That's a
I don't
good
want.
move.
I hate playing the does that make them a playoff team question because I think it's way too early to tell. But like that's definitely a step in the right direction, right?
If they get this Bogdanovich deal to go down, then I think they're in the Eastern Conference. They're definitely a playoff team with Trae Young, and Gallinari and what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? The big number 4,
Capella?
the 4 guy, or
John
the
Collins?
John
John
Collins.
Collins. Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
John Collins and Bogdanovich. That's a good core right there. I think that's a team that could definitely push for the playoffs in the East. But
Yeah.
I like Gallo coming, after all the injuries that he's had throughout his entire career.
He
Still
was very good last year.
still getting these good contracts and still playing well. I'm excited to see that for him.
And I mean, imagine him and Trae Young in the pick and roll too, where he can pick and pop. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
You talked about Rodney Hood. He's returning to Portland, 2 years, $12 million.
Oh, is that official?
They're keeping.
Okay.
I mean, that's good. They need Portland has always needed wings. So
Yeah.
Melo's still out there. I think Melo to the Lakers will happen at some point.
I wouldn't be surprised with that one.
Would you be happy with that, Jordan?
On a vetman deal where it's like no harm, no foul. I'm totally fine with it. His buddies with LeBron. He definitely showed he's still got some left in the tank. I don't need 2009 Melo. I just need like 23 minutes a game, hit 37% of your threes, and hit a couple of big threes in the playoffs, which he's shown he can do, and give me a couple of F out of here rebounds, and I'm good.
Let's quickly talk about De'Aaron Fox before we get into the trade stuff.
Mhm.
Obviously, the 5-year 163, potential to push up to close to 200, right? It's like 196, 195, something like that. If he goes to Supermax. This is the biggest deal so far. This is the only sort of star-making deal of this entire free agency window that we've had in just the 2.5 hours that we've been discussing all of it. I think it's a good move for De'Aaron Fox. I don't know if it's the best move for Sacramento. I like De'Aaron Fox a lot. I think he's a really, really talented player. He has potential to be an all-star. I don't know if he's a Supermax type player. We haven't seen enough out of him yet at this point. I think he has the potential to get there, but he hasn't proven to me that he's worth this kind of money yet. Jordan, it looks like you had something to add to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's tough. I was talking with Jeff before we came on, and I thought it was interesting that, there were potential trade rumors for him, regarding the Kings shopping him, which I was like, why would you shop your best player? Especially when Buddy Hield and these other guys have been on the block, it seems. But I mean, at the end of the day, if it's between potentially not getting full value back in a trade and or losing him in free agency, in a year or two, I'm okay with it. I mean, he's shown a lot of growth every year. He's taken positive steps forward. He's working on his jumper. He's one of the fastest, if not the fastest guy in the league now that John Wall has been injured the last couple of years. He's shown he's not afraid of the big moment. I think he's got what it takes mentally. I remember him torching Lonzo when Kentucky beat UCLA in the tournament a couple of years ago. So he's got like the mental makeup as well. He may not end up he may not end up being like worth every single penny of that extension. But I think if he can be your kind of centerpiece moving forward, we need good point guards on your team. And if he could help attract somebody, I know it's like a lot to ask as Sacramento to bring in free agents, but like if he can at least be there, that could be good for them down the line.
What was the tweet that I sent you guys I saw? I was like, what can you do with 163 million in Sacramento? And it was like, buy Sacramento.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
That's hilarious.
I like the signing because to me, at least in the 2017 draft, I feel like De'Aaron Fox was the most NBA-ready player in that draft. I know Lonzo Ball was the most hype player, but, in the rookie season, Malik Monk didn't really show out. Lonzo Ball didn't really show out his rookie season. Who really did was De'Aaron Fox, and, he's been improving every year, slowly but surely. So now that they have Marvin Bagley, Bogdan is out, but they have that young core that they've been looking for after, the DeMarcus Cousins era. So to give him up so quick in his career, which I feel like that's such a trend in the NBA now, where, like I said, I was talking about this. If you look at the league like 10 years ago, like players who have huge potential, they stay with the respective team who drafted them for like 5 to 8 years. They don't just easily move like 2 to 3 years, but that happens now a lot. So for De'Aaron Fox, to sign this extension, I like it because he does have a lot of potential in my eyes, more than Lonzo. That's arguable, obviously, and yeah, I feel like
keep some respect on my guy's name.
Hey.
I got the Lonzo jersey in the closet.
Y'all don't even want him.
Poor guy. But the one thing on the Fox deal, I could also see this turning into a trade in a couple of years, or him wanting to turn it into a trade, or Sacramento wanting to turn it into a trade.
Mm-hmm.
but because it's so big, I don't know if he'll really live up to the value of it, and it'll be hard to trade him, sort of like a John Wall right now. Jeff, what do you think about the De'Aaron Fox signing?
It's an awful lot of money for a fringe superstar player. I think, however, that at least the Kings have a plan. As Henry said, they're trying to develop around their young nucleus of talent. They're perhaps moving on from Buddy Hield, who is going to be a little bit of a locker room menace, and compare them to the Knicks. For sake of comparison, the Knicks are the Knicks, right? A very storied, on one hand, guys, they're a very storied NBA franchise, right? They've won multiple titles. They're one of the most prestigious brands in the league, but they've been run into the ground by James Dolan because they try to rebuild the team every year with an entirely new plan. The Kings now, by contrast, yes, as we joked, Sacramento could buy the whole town with $160 million, but at least they're committed to one of their core guys. They said, okay, with yet another new management group. Okay, this is our guy in De'Aaron Fox. We're going with him, and we're going to try to build around him. Will it work to make them a contender to win the Western Conference? Probably not. But at least they have some sort of a system to make an effort at it.
I agree. I think it's a good point. I don't have anything else to add other than I think at least the goal is in the NBA is at least have a plan as to what you're doing, and whether that plan works out or not down the line is remains to be seen. But the fact that they're at least trying, as we know, the Kings have been a symbol of mediocrity for how long now? So it's I like that a lot.
That boy Vivek out there doing some work. Let's go ahead and get into the trades now, because I think there's been so many moves here with free agency, but we don't have time to discuss it all because we have a lot of other stuff to discuss. And let's go ahead and start with that Bucks Pelicans trade. The main reason I think why Jeff is here to talk about this came out the day after we recorded the last live stream before the draft. I think it was pretty soon after, but Bucks are getting Drew Holiday from the Pelicans, and Pelicans are getting George Hill, Eric Bledsoe, and some draft picks there in the trade. So what was that? It just popped up on the screen. That was that was new for the comments, but
that's right.
This Bucks Pelicans deal going down. Pretty big move. We already alluded to it a little bit. We talked about it, but Jeff, I'm gonna let you go free here and talk about this trade. Talk about your Bucks. What do you like? What do you not like about this move?
My first reaction when my dad texted me we'd given up 3 first-round picks was, what are they thinking? Let's take a look at the bigger picture, though. The Bucks get rid of Eric Bledsoe. They wanted to move on from Bledsoe because he was not performing well in the playoffs. At this point, the Bucks aren't a cute story anymore. They want to succeed in the playoffs and win the NBA championship. They were not going to do that with Eric Bledsoe. So they moved Bledsoe. They moved George Hill, who was a good locker room guy. So that's unfortunate that they have to let go of him. They give up 3 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. That sounds like a lot. But that's the price of doing business if you want to get a big-name player in the NBA. Look at the Lakers. Goodness gracious, they gave up so much. Many people said they overpaid in Anthony Davis. Does anyone question that trade now? No. Because they got Anthony Davis. They got Anthony Davis, right? They got Anthony Davis. They won the NBA championships. Also, considering that if Giannis stays, and signing Drew Holiday is the big step towards ensuring Giannis stays, those 3 first-round picks are going to be between 24 and 30. And most often, you're not going to get that great of a player there. And the 2 pick swaps, if the Bucks have a better record than the Pelicans, the picks aren't swapped anyways. Jack McCollum of a Sports Illustrated, he made a very good observation. Oftentimes, when a team gives up a big-name player in exchange for a lot of draft picks, the draft picks are just a smokescreen to disguise the fact the team who gave up the player, they got gypped, right? Because you can't really replace a big player with, no matter how many first-round draft picks you have. Because as I said before, only 5 guys can play. How many draft picks do you need? So yes, the Bucks gave up quite a bit to get Drew Holiday, but that's what they needed to do, and thank goodness they were bold enough to make the move.
What I think Drew Holiday gives them is also a sense of stability, which they really didn't have with Eric Bledsoe. I feel Eric Bledsoe was a good pickup for them, but he was so up and down in his play, and he had some games where he was like all-star caliber, and he had some games where he was just a complete dud. And I really like
in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think anything above him is an upgrade.
Yeah, and Drew Holiday. I mean, like you talk about Milwaukee being one of the better defensive teams in the league, and you add Drew Holiday to the mix there. I mean, that's scary. That's really, really scary. And Jordan might dispute me a little bit on this one, but I think the Lakers, I think the Lakers and the Eastern Conference do have something to worry about in this. I'm a big Drew Holiday fan. I really love Drew Holiday, so I've been pushing for him to go to Denver. I really wanted that deal to happen. It didn't go down, but
please just refer to the hoodie. We have the ultimate trump card.
All right, go for it. It
is. No, I agree with Jeff, and I think he makes a very good point about the picks as well. You think about the Bucks and where they're projected to be over the next couple of years, and I do. I guess we can touch on it in a second. I do expect Giannis to sign the Supermax almost out of good faith, right? I don't think they would have done the trades, even the failed Bogdanovich one, without talking with Giannis and getting the reassurance. So you're expecting him to be there for at least the next 5-6 years. You expect those picks to be really not even 24. You expect those picks to be like 26, 27 to 30 because you want to be at least in the Eastern Conference Finals. And so, what's the value there? You don't get a lot of good guys that late. And then the pick swaps, like you said, down the line, they may or may not, hurt especially if the Pelicans are as good as everyone thinks they're going to be in a couple of years. It may be swapping 27 with 22. And what's that do as well? So I think it's a good move in the end. People have pointed out some of the flaws. Drew's not the best catch and shoot 3-pointer. His numbers aren't as good as you think. Same thing. He's only there for 1 year, so how does that work long term? But I think the gamble's worth it. He's an upgrade over Bledsoe. I think Bledsoe, no offense, is absolute garbage. I don't know if you like him, Jeff, but I thought he's absolute hot garbage in the playoffs. He's not a guy I could trust. You need guys in the playoffs that you can rely on game in and game out, and there's not a lot of those guys in the league, but I think, Drew Holiday is certainly a better option than Eric Bledsoe because you're going to get the same defensive intensity. And Bledsoe's a good defender. I'm not knocking that. But I think you're going to get the same, if not better, defensive intensity from Holiday, and you're going to get the consistency on offense. The guy doesn't seem to be too rattled ever. He's got a good head on his shoulders. So I think it's a good move for him, and I think it's going to definitely benefit them, this year for sure. I think they're going to be, if they hypothetically make it to the finals or something like that, I think whoever they play in the West, that'd be a very, very good series.
Let's toss it now to, according to the comments, the Kelly Oubre Jr. of Nuts and Bolts Sports.
I love that.
What do you think about that?
I absolutely love that.
Henry, what you got on this one?
Oh, me?
Yeah, that's you. Come on, you're not paying attention to the comments.
I just saw right now. No, I was gonna just add on to what Jordan said. I love the idea of a Drew Holiday Giannis duo because what it reminds me of a Drew Holiday Anthony Davis duo. Remember when they swept the Blazers? It was just such a perfect combination because I like that Drew Holiday they didn't acquire an all-star. Drew Holiday is near an all-star but not an all-star. And I think that's perfectly put for what the Bucks need in order to get over the top because yes, he's an upgrade from Eric Bledsoe, but he's not going to be as ball dominant where he takes away, Giannis's game or where he cancels out Giannis's game or, possessions with the ball and everything. So I think the pick and roll there is going to work to perfection. And Jordan said, in the playoffs, Eric Bledsoe was pretty hot garbage, and he just showed inconsistency. And he's just been showing inconsistency throughout his time with the Bucks. I remember he got dominated by Terry Rozier. I remember that.
Terry.
By Scary Terry, and just getting rid of him. Now Drew Holiday, I like that like I said, he's not an all-star, so he's not ball dominant. He's not egoistic. He's actually one of the most respected players in the league. I think we can all agree on that. Mm-hmm. And, he just has such high praise for his perimeter defense. So to have that now in your backcourt paired with Giannis, and they could have gotten Bogdan, but then something happened there, which is, we can get into that again. But the Bucks are getting their pieces to keep Giannis, at least for that, for Drew Holiday's 1 year that he's there. But aside from that, if they don't keep Giannis happy, he's going to the Heat. I don't think there's any dispute on that. I know to make Jeff mad.
You have to take swings, and Raj, I'm sure, can allude to this even more than all of us. If you remember LeBron's the end of his first tenure with the Cavs, there, right? They kind of played with some subpar players. And the Cavs took all the wrong swings, right? They added like Antoine Jameson past his prime. They
Ben
added
Wallace.
Ben Wallace past his prime. Shaq
yeah.
way past his prime.
Mhm.
At least Milwaukee's taking a swing at a guy who's still prime is a a word to use.
He's a contributor.
I think he's an extremely steady contributor. And the Bogdanovich thing, which we can talk about next, he was also smack dab in his prime. So they're making the right swings. There's a difference between taking a swing and whiffing, and I think the Bucks are doing that. I do want to just end with one note on Bledsoe because I had to do the numbers. The last 2 years of Milwaukee, he shot 48% from the field and 33% in 18-19, 47.5% from the field, 34% from three in 19-20. Solid numbers. Go to the playoffs. 2019, 41% from the field, 24% from three. Then last year, 39% from the field, although he was a little hurt, and 25% from three. So case in point, defense rest, Jordan 1, Kelly Oubre 0.
No, I agree with that because remember he wanted to leave the Clippers because he didn't want to be in Chris Paul's shadow anymore. He wanted that starting point guard role. Now that he got it, I don't disagree with you. Like he's been very inconsistent. So for the Bucks to get rid of him, Jeffrey, I'm sorry to say, I don't know if you're an Eric Bledsoe fan, but probably the best thing they could do.
Well, I like Jordan's rules. No offense, but he's hot garbage.
No offense, but like it's going to be major offense probably.
Very eloquently said, Jordan. I agree with Henry. He was a good community guy in Milwaukee. He was a solid contributor in the regular season. Remember in 2018, 2019, the Bucks were just starting to get good. They were coming off being a 7 seed, losing the first round. All of a sudden, they win 60 games, one of the best records in the history of the Bucks. Bledsoe was a key contributor to that run. Eventually, though, fans and the players habituate to a certain level of success and need to move on from the next level. The Bucks had gotten to the point that Bledsoe wasn't contributing enough, and that's why they had to make the move. He was good for the role he served, but now they need a bigger role.
Jordan just alluded to it, and we've already sort of mentioned it a couple times here, but the Bogdanovich thing, that's the other big reason I think why Jeff is here. I think, Jeff, when we discussed you originally coming on, the whole fallout of the thing hadn't happened yet. We still thought that Bogdanovich was going to Milwaukee, and then there was that whole issue with the fact that it was supposed to be a sign and trade, and Bogdanovich had not agreed to the deal, and then the explosion of tampering and whatnot, and now it looks like Bogdanovich is there's basically no chance of him going to the Bucks at this point. He's not going to re-sign with Sacramento. It looks like I think Lakers were one of the options. It looks like Hawks are probably the top option for him to go to, though.
I think favor right now with the fact that they just got Gallinari and they still have $25 million in cap space. I think that's. Yeah, I mean, Jeff, do you want to talk about like what?
What does it feel like?
Because I think the key with Milwaukee was that they were going all like, even though they were getting these players, they were going all in with that starting five, right? Because you're going to have Drew, Bogdanovich, Middleton, Giannis, and Brook Lopez. Because Robin Lopez has opted out. You traded all your bench guys, so it was going to be a very starting lineup heavy, which would have been ironic given the fact that Budenholzer does not like to play his starters a lot of minutes. But what does that do for them now?
The Bucks. They were going to trade away several of their core players to get Bogdanovich. The trade would have included Ersan Ilyasova, DJ Wilson, and Dante DiVincenzo. Ersan ended up getting waived anyway by the Bucks. He became rather ineffective at the end. Unfortunately, Dante voiced his displeasure at the trade on Twitter, criticizing the Bucks, and now it's rather awkward that Dante is still a part of the Bucks. But to be clear, it is not good that the trade did not go through. Bogdanovich would have been a significant boost to this Bucks roster. And how does it feel? It's like one game I went to in my high school days. My team seemed to have won the game in a half-court shot, but I looked around the court just to make sure, and the ref waved his hand. No! That's the way it feels like for the Bucks. They're like, this is our one opportunity for glory, and then the front office bungled it. And I don't know who it was that leaked this deal, but now the Bucks are really in trouble because the NBA has now started a tampering investigation. If you ask me, the Bucks kind of got railroaded. Every team tampers, right? Because the Bucks were too obvious about it. So now they're in an unfortunate situation. All hope is not lost. Sometimes some of the best deals are those that don't happen. Or as Oscar Wilde said, when the gods wish to punish man, they grant him his prayers. So who knows? Maybe the Bucks make a new deal with the core they have. It is going to be much more difficult without Ursan as a bargaining chip. I don't know where the Bucks go from here, but a lot of the shine has come off the automotive over the events of the last 2 days.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sorry, Raj and I keep hitting the button.
Yeah, we're power hungry.
No, I just wanted I agree, and like I said, I thought that would have been an extremely intimidating lineup. You would have been able to make the argument at least 1 through 5 that it would have been the most complete and full lineup in the NBA, even if the bench would have been a little lacking. So the Bucks, you feel bad they just seem like they had pieces in place, and now they're on kind of on their heels here trying to scramble. But I mean, in terms of the tampering thing, coming from someone who's a fan of a team that has gone through a couple tampering things, Magic Johnson gave us a tampering case every 4 months. I don't think that I have anything to worry about. I mean, I think it's just business at the end of the day, and there'll be nothing that you can prove. But Milwaukee's definitely got to scramble now. They don't have a lot of money. I think they'll have the mid-level exception. I don't know. I think they have the mid-level exception, the biannual exception, which is 3.6, which is what Wes Matthews signed for, and then they'll have the vet minimum. So they don't have a ton of stuff to work with. But who did they keep? Remind me of that trade that they keep DiVincenzo and who else?
They did keep DiVincenzo. They waived their son Ilyasova. They kept DiVincenzo. And what was the third piece, Jeff?
DJ Wilson, who doesn't play very much at all. But
Dante's a nice piece.
They wouldn't have given up much, honestly.
Yeah.
Dante's a nice piece, though. I think he's definitely maybe not the ultimate 6th man, but he's definitely a 7th, 8th man. You have to play every night. Yeah. Smart guy out of Villanova, kind of we talked about the draft on Wednesday, Saddiq Bey, Jalen Brunson, all those guys just come in from Nova and they know how to fill a role. So you still have some pieces there. Honestly, the big thing, and maybe Jeff, you could tell me how you feel about it. I'm pretty much out on Budenholzer. I was out the second. I couldn't believe that they were struggling in the playoffs and he still refused to play Giannis more than 33 minutes a game. I don't get it how you make the same mistake 2 years in a row when you have this superstar. I remember when LeBron, Kobe, those Tracy McGrady, those kind of guys, those athletic freaks were in their prime. I mean, they're playing 38 minutes a game in the regular season. Then the playoffs are playing 41. LeBron's playing 44. Iverson used to play 46 a game. And then to keep Giannis, I respect him keeping him fresh during the regular season. I think it's genius, especially when you can still win at a historic level and win 60 games. But when the playoffs come, you got to unleash them. You got to work them into a rotation, at least play them 37 minutes, 38 minutes a game. I feel like Budenholzer has been a little too predictable. Do you think that changes this year?
I don't think so. I agree with you, Jordan. I think Mike Budenholzer is a rather limited coach. I think back to when he was head coach with Atlanta, he took a hardy group of underachievers. They won 60 games, went all the way to the conference finals. The Cavs go into Phillips Arena, win the first 2 games. And of all people, Charles Barkley says, these fans leaving the arena, they know this series is not coming back to Atlanta. For once. Charles Barkley's guarantee came true, and it was a sweep. But you might say, well, they didn't quite have the most talent. He did better than you could have expected them to. Enter 2018-2019, the year I alluded to a bit earlier. Bucks have an amazing regular season, win 60 games, sweep a terrible Detroit team, go by Boston. They win the first 2 games at home against Toronto. Can't quite win game 3. No big deal. It's still 2-1, right? But then the Raptors head coach, name escapes me at the moment. He made the adjustment in game 4, and he put the defense on Giannis, walled up Giannis with a wall, passed to the outside shooters, and the Raptors turned around and buried the Bucks in the next 3 games. Flash forward next season again. Bucks coming along, dominating everyone. Regular season's no problem. Then the coronavirus hits, shuts down everything. It seems they lost all their momentum in the bubble. They just could not have that eye of the tiger, that heart of a champion. They had a lot of talent on paper, but they couldn't put it all together. They lost game 1 to Orlando, one of the most hideous Bucks playoff losses of the last 5 years, and that's saying a lot. came back to beat Orlando, but from not the very beginning. The second half of game 1 against the Heat. In game 1, second half, when the Bucks started to have problems. The first half, the Bucks came off to an early lead. There we go. We're all worried for nothing. But the Heat punch, the Bucks do not punch back. the Heat go on a big run, win game 1. Game 2 could have gone either way. And in game 3, the Heat have a tremendous fourth quarter, and Budenholzer has no answers. 3-0, series over. Unfortunately, there's too much money tied up in Budenholzer's contract with guarantees, so the Bucks ownership wasn't willing to part with him over the offseason. He's going to the old adage that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It sounds like a lame cliche, but until Budenholzer demonstrates that he can make the adjustments he hasn't been able to do up to this point, I'm not able to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I want to go off real quick on what Jeff just said because I wrote an article on that on Mike Budenholzer's decision making as a coach, and he reminds me
there, love it.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Doc Rivers, a great regular season coach, but crumbles in the playoffs. Now, a pattern that I saw, something that an interesting observation that I made was when Giannis went down with his ankle injury, Chris Middleton's minutes increased by I think it was 10 to 12 minutes, something like that. And obviously his productivity is going to go up and everything, but he saved that game. He won that game for the Bucks. And then before that, he was also playing on, I guess you can say, restricted minutes, just like Giannis. And Mike Budenholzer was getting a lot of heat for that. So that game should have proved to Mike Budenholzer that his style of play or his adjustments are flat out horrible, and that should have been his realization of okay, I should, what Jordan was saying, just completely unleash my best players, especially in the playoffs. But then that he beat him the next game, and they didn't have the chance to get Giannis back and to prove that. So Mike Budenholzer's tenure in Milwaukee, obviously they haven't talked about replacing him or anything like that, but if he doesn't change that in the next season, I can see him getting out of there easily.
It's just like what are you saving him for? I think the regular season strategy is brilliant. I think the fact that they can still be the 1 seed in the last 2 years while playing Giannis 31 minutes a game that's what you want, right? But and it's time in the postseason, especially the last 2 weeks of the regular season, start amping up the minutes, get him on a schedule that has him slowly progressing to playing more in the playoffs. And I will say there is a 10% of this blame pie that needs to go on Giannis because no offense, you're the star player. You could tell the coach hey, I'm going to stay in the game. What's he going to do? Argue with Bud? And Bud can't pull him if he doesn't want to come out. Especially if it's if they're struggling in the third quarter or something and he goes to pull him at the 6-minute mark, Giannis needs to recognize the situations where he needs to stay in the game and take over and keep his team afloat. Not saying he has to do it every game, but there are going to be moments in the playoffs where it's going to happen, and everybody's done it. LeBron's said no. Kobe's famous for saying no to the substitution and hitting 4 straight shots. Everyone has those moments as stars where you have that ability to stay in the game. So he needs to take a little bit of responsibility on his end.
Let's go ahead and discuss some of these other trades, and let's try to get through these quick. I'm just going to list off a few of the other ones that happened. Obviously, the Sixers unloaded Al Horford's contract, sent him to OKC in exchange for Danny Green, who was part of the Dennis Schroeder deal. Another one, 76ers Mavs, Seth Curry for Josh Richardson. That was one that was hot on draft night, I believe it was.
Good move.
Warriors filling in the Klay Thompson injury with Kelly Oubre Jr. sending a 21 draft pick, and Thunder continuing to pile on the draft picks there. And sort of, I guess, bigger name, quote unquote, Blazers, Celtics, Grizzlies, Enes Kanter going back to the Portland Trailblazers. Grizzlies are getting Mario Hezonja and Desmond Bane, who was the 30th pick in the draft, I believe, and the Celtics are getting future draft consideration. Henry, your team's involved in this deal. What do you think about losing Kanter for some future quote unquote draft consideration?
Get rid of him. I'm so happy about that because the last 3 games of the playoffs I saw Kanter play for, he literally got tired 5 minutes into the game. He was just holding on to his knees. He was out of breath and everything. I was like, get this man out of here. He's not conditioned. He's not ready. Obviously for playoff basketball. So yeah, getting back to Portland, happy for him, whatever, yada, yada, yada. But if we're going to get rid of him, get rid of Daniel Tice too. I feel like we're on a good roll. So we can if we can do that as well. I know there's a lot of trade talks with Boston right now, especially, with Gordon Hayward. If Danny Ainge is trying to flip him into, the ultimate package from the Pacers, trying to get Victor Oladipo and Miles Turner. If that happens, I think that Danny Ainge should win Executive of the Year because they're not worth that. Gordon Hayward is not worth that, and he will bamboozle the Pacers out of what they got. And I think, why I think it's going to work? Why I think they can also get Victor Oladipo? Because I don't think it was bluff when Victor Oladipo was telling other teams that he wanted to play for them. Now that's out, and then he said, no, I never said that. and here's the reality: players know that he said that. There's going to be players like, nah, he's BSing. Like, he really did say that. So now there's distrust between their star player and the front office. So now when there's this distrust, that just creates like a toxic environment for the team and for the front office. So in order to get rid of that, and Victor Oladipo is not the player he was, when he was like coming up as predominantly as a superstar for the Pacers. So they're like, you know what, maybe start again. They drafted what's his name, Cassius Stanley. Yeah. So he's one of my favorite players. I'm not saying he's going to be a bona fide star or anything within the next 5 years, but he's a good young player. Probably not to build around him, but I think it's a time for the Pacers to rebuild. They had their chances. That they win the Paul George trade, but that time is up. Just give it to the Celtics. I don't know what's the holdup right now. Gordon Hayward.
It's the holdup. Anything's 2K. We could just give the Celtics what they want. I don't think that you cannot. We talked about right before we went on. I don't think that you should be able to get Oladipo and Miles Turner for Gordon Hayward, especially given the fact that, and I know Hayward has had really bad luck from literally the first game that he's been there, and it's not his fault. It stinks. And every time he's come back he's been hurt again. Which is, it's just bad luck. It's his experience in Boston has not been favorable, and I don't blame him for not being, thrilled. But he's kind of just been weirdly pissy about the whole thing, and waiting this time and doing the extension for the option. It's just dude, do you want the $34 million or do you not? To me, it's just not a very difficult choice. Either you want the money and you want to stay there on a playoff team, or you want to get decent money and go and be in just a completely different area to clear your mind, mentally and whatnot. And I just feel like he's been him and Han this whole thing. And if Ainge can get at least Miles Turner, I think that's just an automatic upgrade, because I think Hayward's not that valuable anymore with his injuries, especially in Boston. So you guys definitely need a center, but if you guys get Oladipo, I think that's just way too much. I think Oladipo is going to be back to
for you. Nah, too much for you.
Yeah, too much for me. That's right. I am the law with trades in the league. Don't forget.
Jeff, anything to hone in on from any of those trades that I mentioned before we move on to some speculation?
No, I'm good on my end.
You're good on your end? All right. So, yeah, obviously the Clay going down, that sucks. And we talked about it on the draft, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But Kelly Oubre Jr. filling in there is a pretty good pickup, I think, for the Warriors. Obviously, not quite the level of Clay, but, in some ways, similar play style. And I think he's going to be a good fit there under Steve Kerr's leadership. Let's close things out with speculation. Let's try to go quickly because we are running long. I don't want to toss out all the names that are out there, but, you mentioned Gordon Hayward being one, Fred VanVleet still out there, Russell Westbrook's trade deal still in the works. Jeff, from all the stuff that's going on, from the speculation front, the big names that have kind of been involved from a free agent standpoint, but also from a trade standpoint, is there anything that sort of catches your eye that you wanted to discuss here?
Yeah, what's going on with James Harden and Russell Westbrook? The Rockets, it's like they're the Boston Red Sox when the theater owner traded Babe Ruth. It's like they're trying to get rid of as many guys as they possibly can and tank payroll down to 100K. So the last rumors I heard were James Harden was going to go to the Nets, and holy cow, would that make the Nets a stacked team. But now, oh no, we don't want to trade him. We're going to hold on to him. And the superstars last saying anything going on with that anyway. So we'll see what happens there. If James Harden really doesn't want to play for the Rockets, he's not going to play for the Rockets. As a WNBA fan, I've been through this plenty of times. The star player gets the last say. And Russell Westbrook, goodness knows what's going to happen to him. But there's been rumors flying out he's going to go all over the place. I even heard that the Charlotte Hornets were running to get Russell Westbrook. A total garbage team. Hey,
they got LaMelo now. I said they got LaMelo now, so they're more garbage.
Oh yeah. Oh, they got LaMelo. Oh, okay. They're going to be winning the title next year. Oh boy. All right. Jokes aside, Houston is the team to watch in the offseason, but for the worst reasons.
Henry, from the other speculation that's going on, you already mentioned Gordon Hayward. I don't know if you have more to add to that, or if there's any other players that you kind of have your eye on here.
Henry looking at Russ too. Come on.
Yeah, right.
Come on. I Marcus Smart and 2 firsts. Who says that?
There was some speculation of James Harden to Boston. I was like, nope. Hell no. To reel it back to what Jeff was saying about Goran Dragic, of how a player fits a team's culture, that's so true. James Harden does not fit that culture. You see what he's doing. He's averaging 35 a game. Don't get me wrong, but when you also average like 30 free throws a game, and that's all you do. Also, I don't think that's Celtic culture. That's not Celtic basketball. I don't want him to take away, playing progression from Jaylen Brown, from Jason Tatum, which is the main core of Boston. I was looking at our list right now, speculations, and I didn't know actually that Russell Westbrook's one of his predominant destinations in trade talks is the Hornets. I want to know you guys' your thoughts on if that were to happen, a LaMelo and Russell Westbrook duo. How would that pan out?
I said disaster like 100 times on
Yikes.
the draft show. I could say disaster 100 times just about LaMelo and Russell Westbrook being on the same team under the leadership of Michael Jordan being the owner. That's a media.
There is
shitstorm in the
literally
making.
there is one ball. You get one ball to play with each night. I know I say that for a lot of people, but like, there's literally, we're talking LaMelo's the guy that scored 92 in high school, was getting triple teamed and was still shooting the ball because he wanted to up his points. And you have Russ, who is a petulant, ball handling guy for most of the shot clock. So yeah, that would be not good. I think if Russ goes anywhere, I think the Knicks have to be like in play the most just because of the city, and Russ would be a good I guess I don't want to say culture fit there, but like he's built for the city more than he would be for Charlotte. But I also know the Knicks, one of the speculations too is they're gonna be meeting with Fred VanVleet. Obviously a guy who's got a ring in Toronto, had another very, very good year last year, has openly said he wants to get paid. I know Toronto's actually very all in on trying to bring him back for like 4 years, $85 million or something like that. But we'll see if the Knicks, if the Knicks can offer a little bit more money. I think that's what it's going to come down to. So it could be, which honestly, like, good for the Knicks for like, VanVleet's not going to be a franchise swinging player, but like if you can get him and
Obi Toppin,
like I know like a lot of the New York guys were killing the Toppin pick, and Stephen A. Smith was like all upset that they took Toppin instead of Halliburton, which like I like Halliburton a lot too. But like they got rid of 2 power forwards the next day, so they've cleared up some space. You have what's his name? You have Fred VanVleet. You could have Toppin. You have Mitchell Robinson, who's a great project at center, a little raw but a lot of potential. Barrett, who I'm personally out on, but like I know people are still stocking him. And if they add somebody else, if they make a run at a Bogdanovich or somebody, if they just throw money at another player, like they're not going to make the playoffs, but they can take that step in the right direction and have some sort of plan, like Jeff was alluding to with the Kings. And then I think Ibaka, I know I've been talking about him for like all week, but I think he's a huge dominant. I think he still has some left in the tank last year. He's not as old as we thought. I thought he was like 35 like Marc Gasol, but apparently he's only like 31, 32. But we know what he can do, right? He can be a great help defender. Has really been able to space the floor the last couple of years and expanded his game out to the 3-point range. So I know Brooklyn, like I said, if I had to play splits, I'd say it was 80-85% chances of going to Brooklyn, which is going to be huge for them. He's going to be reunited with his buddy, and think of all the length they're going to have. Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan, and Ibaka and Durant, obviously. But if there is a way that he can go to another team, if he goes to the Clippers or if he goes to the Lakers, which I would love, he could play such a pivotal role for them as well. You look at the Clippers; they need a big guy desperately who can play some defense, and for the Lakers, to give AD a break when he's resting or injured, or that they want to put both of them on the floor at the same time. Imagine that length scenario. So I think he's going to be a key piece, and he's obviously going to be highly coveted. I'm very interested to see where he lands up in the next 48 hours.
Let's close things out with the biggest surprise of free agency: Andre Drummond opting into his $28.7 million contract with Cleveland.
Take a hike.
That's it. That's what we're ending on. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're gonna have a lot more to discuss. By the end of the weekend, probably there's gonna be more moves in the next. We've been scrolling through Twitter, and there's a bunch of names that have been popping up through this episode, which we mentioned. Christian Wood, I guess his situation's up in the air. He's supposed to sign with Houston, but now it looks like he is still talking to other teams. So there's a lot that's gonna break over the weekend. But thanks everybody for joining us for this episode. Also go back to Wednesday and check out our 3+ hour draft coverage where we reacted live to basically the entire first round. That was a lot of fun. Also be sure to check out our merch store, Bonfire. Where is it? Scroll all the way. Bonfire.com/store/NVS. Also be sure to check out all of Jeff's work. Jeff, what do you got going on here? I know you're doing WNBA coverage, but it's the off season right now. So what else you got going on?
So I work for another company too, but my biggest contribution to Nuts and Bolts Sports, I help edit my great teammates' works and polish it all up. So please just follow our main account at Nuts and Bolts SP on Twitter and follow all of our great writers. if any of our writers, go ahead and tag me. You want something edited, I can put it up on Twitter. This is a great company. We're building a great brand, and please do follow us in all the social media platforms as we continue building our momentum into what's going to be a fantastic 2021 NBA season, and hopefully it works out for the Bucks too. But we'll have to see about that.
Lakers and Sixers.
So follow Jeff there. Follow Nuts and Bolts Sports, like he said. Follow Kelly Oubre Jr., but don't follow Jordan.